Good comrades. This is Behind the Walls Talk with your founder, William McCallum, and I thank you for visiting this domain. I'm here to give you an insight into the minds and hearts of those incarcerated that have been deemed voiceless. Well, this is where their voice and stories will be told for those of you who are concerned with human beings that are in prison for the mistakes they have made and for some of the injustices that were committed against them. Resolutions for reform is the goal and objective looking to be obtained. Now step into our world. Welcome to Behind the Walls Talk. This is your host, William McCallum, and it's my pleasure and honor today to be here and conduct this interview on this episode with a comrade and a brother of the struggle. So without further ado, tell the listeners, my brother, your name and where you are from.
Well, first and foremost, I'm Santonia Jenrette, and I'm from Whiteville, North Carolina. To most people, it's better known as the Circle, and that's just what it is.
Okay, we got the Circle in the house. Hey, what were you charged with? How much time did they give you, my brother?
Okay, I was charged with, I got a slew of charges. The main charges was two counts of first-degree murder, and stemming from that, I had
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
2 conspiracies to commit first-degree murder, kidnapping, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, 2 counts of firearm by felons, and that's mainly the charges I was charged with. You get
I know, bro.
you get that information.
Hold up, bro. I lost you.
All right, let's try that again.
Hey, you still there?
Everything
Yeah,
was fine. You was the one that wasn't there.
No, I got lost because it cut me up. I couldn't hear nothing.
Okay.
You're going to have to start all the way back over then. Just start all the way back over. That's not
All
going
right.
Yeah, it went mute on
Yeah,
my
we can do
end.
that.
Okay, let's go back to the beginning. Now, welcome to Behind the Walls Talk. It's my pleasure and honor today to be here and conduct this interview on this episode with a comrade and brother of the struggle. So without further ado, tell the listeners, my brother, your name and where you're from.
First and foremost, I'm Santonia Jenrette. To a lot, I'm known as YT. I'm from Whiteville, North Carolina, and to most, that's known as the Circle.
That's not the Circle in the house. Hey, what were you charged with? I know you got charged and you were convicted of something. You were convicted, but what were you charged with initially, and how much time did they give you?
Okay, initially I was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Stemming from that, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, 2 counts of firearm by felon, 1 count of kidnapping, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and a few more misdemeanor charges I can't quite call because it's been so long and I don't look too much into that. But the totality of the time that I was given was 2 consecutive life sentences. Along with that was 56 to 64 years. And as far as the kidnapping and conspiracy to kidnapping, I was acquitted of those charges.
Ask you something, man. When the judge gave you that sentence, what were the feelings that went through you, man? Like, what was on your mind? Like, what were you thinking at that moment?
You know, to be honest, it's like when I got the time, I think I was a bit confused because I truly wasn't expecting to lose trial, you know, because I played and I maintained my innocence even until now. So receiving the sentence, it was kind of confusing. And, you know, having my family and my loved ones, I at the same time, it's like you got to be strong for them, even though you're hurting for yourself because you're the one that's being convicted. And so to hear the judge say that you have life without the possibility of parole, it kind of sort of does something to you. It kind of shakes you to the core because to think and imagine that, hey, I'm being sent away and I'll never get a chance to see the day, like a day again, or embrace my family. That does something to you. But the confusing part was, just how they went about giving me the time. Just, seeing the lies that came from some of the testimonies of the witnesses and knowing that the state knew their witnesses were lies. It was really confusing, man, and it bothered me a lot. It was hard for me to cry, at the time because I was confused. I was still really trying to register the fact that I just got that type of sentence.
So when did it register to you? Like, when was that moment, like that wow moment?
That moment was, I think once again, a turning point in my trial that I felt caused me to lose the trial was finding out, like,
this call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
Finding out in the middle of trial that my brother had signed statements against me, and they withheld that information and stuff like that. So it was confusing because the judge allowed the information in, and it's like, man, losing trial and knowing that my brother, my biological blood, is the one who signed the statements that got me convicted. And it's like, man, now it's going through this direct appeal. There's the process we go through called the direct appeal. Going through that direct appeal, I'm still hanging on to that hope, thinking, I know God didn't bring me this far just to leave me here now. And losing that direct appeal, that was worse than losing my trial, because while I'm going through the direct appeal, it's like I still got the hope. I know I'm going to get back. I'm going to get this time back. It ain't the end of me. But losing that direct appeal, and at the time I was in segregation for like a year. And so to not have any outside connection or anybody, to consult with, to comfort me through those moments, I almost gave up, man. That's the time when I almost gave up.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
And it was like, you know what? This can't be real. This can't be true. It shattered something inside of me. I think that's the moment where I really broke down, and I just really had to cling to God more than any time ever, because I really couldn't see myself staying in prison. But at that moment, I couldn't see myself ever getting out of prison again. It's like, man, I'm really here.
Hey, man, you said that your brother signed statements against you, man. That had to be something that was hurtful to you, man.
Yes, it was, because, when you're young and you grow up with this street mentality, and you got this thing we call the code of silence. And when you know that you're loyal and you have been loyal to everybody that you're affiliated with, my brother is somebody I thought I would never have to question his loyalty ever. And there was no amount of money you could ever pay me to believe that my brother would be the reason I received time, the type time that I had, because this is somebody I was willing and always willing to lay down my life for. It's like, if I had to choose that I live or die for him to continue to live, there was no question ever that I would lay down my life and die for him to continue to live. So that was the thing that hurt the most, because I remember him taking his time in 2011. I didn't go to trial until 2013. And so when he took his time, he showed me his plea. And he was like, bro, I just want to show you that I didn't do anything underhand. So I saw his plea, and nowhere in that did I see anything saying that for his cooperation, he was being received the time that he received, which was 13 to 16 years, when all the evidence and all the state's witnesses was against him. So that was the time where the DA offered me a plea. I had a way out, and the plea agreement was to cooperate with them against my brother, and, they would give me a sentence where I could get out again. But it was never a thing, because I'm honoring that code of silence. And that's the thing that I had to learn the hardest, is that sometimes you could be loyal to a fault. So my loyalty to my brother and my willingness to sacrifice and keep my mouth closed about the information I did receive concerning the crimes that I was convicted of, although I pled innocent, nobody wants to hear that. because the question remains that, oh, you're charged. You must be guilty somewhere. And it's kind of hard proving you're not guilty, especially when you're not willing to snitch and tell on the people that are. And so, yeah, that was a very hurtful thing.
Hey, so basically what I'm hearing is, man, that the DA, they really basically was trying to play y'all against one another just to get a conviction. And either one, it didn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It really didn't matter because, hey, this is the part we didn't bring up. I stayed in the county for 5.5 years. When you know that a person is guilty and had convicted a charge of a crime, it don't take you 5.5 years to take that person to trial. I never prolonged or postponed my case. I initially asked for fast and speedy trial, but at the time, you know, when you're young and you're ignorant to the law, you know, ignorance is no excuse. So that's something I had to kind of like weigh in the balance. And I'm 20 at the time. I'm facing the death penalty at that. And so my thing is, once again, my loyalty to my loved ones. Snitching is never an option. The DA, the judges, they don't care about none of that. The detective, he never even asked about my whereabouts on that night or my alibi. And I actually had an alibi. He never checked into it because he never asked. His only thought was, we know you're guilty. We know you did it. We just want to know why. And my response to him was, I didn't commit these crimes, man. And so that's really the only thing that the system is concerned with when the charge is brought up, closing the case and giving some type of closure to the family, whether the person is innocent or guilty, that doesn't matter. What matters is that somebody take the rest of the charge.
How long have you not been incarcerated, bro?
So as of now, today, I've been incarcerated for a little over 17 years.
And what have your prison experience been like?
You know, for my first 7 years, I think it was the worst.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Now, hold that thought, my brother. We're going to get right back to that question. Behind the Walls Talk, we'll continue.
Mm-hmm.
Back to Behind the Walls Talk. And my question was to you, my brother, what have your prison experience been like?
Well, up until this day, it's been a wild journey, man. It's been very rough. You know, my first 7 years at the most, I think, has been the worst because being in close custody, you know, after processing and everything, being in close custody, you still, you know, it still lingers on your mind, the reality of the type of time you've been given. And you have so much violence going on around you because at the close custody I was at the time was Bertie Correctional, and it's violence every day. So you imagine 7 years, you know, the code that they use, the language is a code for, it basically symbolizes a fight, an inmate-to-inmate conflict. Well, code 7 would be like a inmate-officer conflict. So for 7 years, and you imagine every day, not every other day or every once in a while, but every day for 7 years, there's a stabbing. Either officers being stabbed or another prisoner being stabbed. To have to be able to navigate and to survive and not be a part of any of that is very tough. It puts you in a bad place because you got to think about your safety. So it's either you conform to the things going on for your survival.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
Or you learn to become wise. And then my thing was I had already been locked up at the time when I got on state for over 5.5 years before I even came to state.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
Over time, you know, people tend to forget about you. You know, it's the little statement that people make, out of sight, out of mind. People tend to forget about you. Loved ones tend to fade away, so you kind of lose a lot of support. And in the process of having to carry the burden of the type time you've been given, you got to figure it out. So it's been rough, man. The food sucks. It's like you don't really get proper medical treatment and things of that nature. So that's the toughest thing, man. And just to have to deal with that and to be losing loved ones in the process, man, it kind of does something to you, you know. And that's my thing, man. Just having to survive, man. It's really a tough ordeal. I wouldn't wish something like this on my worst enemy, but I found a way, and I think the only way I was able to really overcome a lot of the things was just having my faith, man, and constantly believing that this can't be it. It's not it. You know, God got something better. And that's what helped me the most during my toughest times.
Do you have more mental support from someone in society right now?
Could you say that again, please?
Like, do you have more or mental support from someone in society right now, somebody that you could call on whenever you go through hard times or whatever, you know?
Okay, yeah, I still have a few people. One mainly being my uncle, Tyrell, or whatever I call him. Most people know him by Uncle Duke or Uncle Psycho. Him, you know, which is my father's brother. He's always there for me. And you have one of my friends, my close friends from back home, which used to be my bus driver, Miss Charlene Pollard. You know, she's there for me. She supports me. She kind of take on the role as a mother. You know, and I have my sister, my baby sister, you know, out of all of my siblings, she's there for me, and I can call, talk to, and I need to talk to, and just a few friends here and there, you know, but those are the main three that's really there and standing for me and with me.
That's right. Is there anything you would like to show? Is there anything you would like to say to them right now? Any type of gratitude you would like to show them?
Absolutely. You know, I'm always a man of gratitude. I believe that gratitude is important in all of our lives. So with every opportunity I'm able to thank and appreciate someone, to show my appreciation, that's something I do my part and my best in. And so I definitely would like to say to them, you know, I'm very grateful that God has put people like you guys in my life, especially through these times, because I think without y'all, it makes it even more difficult for me to become rehabilitated or reformed in my mental state or my spiritual state of being first and foremost, because I think that's very important. So it helps me in the process of knowing and believing that it can get better, and it's going to get better. So without y'all, once again, it'll definitely be a lot harder than it is for me right now. So I appreciate y'all, and I just can't express it enough. You know, there's so much I think of y'all guys and so much I would love to be able to do in return for you guys, which I know you don't do it, and I know they don't do it just because of that. The love, the support is genuine, it's real, and I feel it, and I know that they're always with me. So I thank you guys, you know, and like I say, I just wish the best would come out of y'all lives, and at every corner there's a blessing for you.
That's what's up, bro. Do you have any children?
No, currently I have no children, but I would say this. My siblings, you know, I said I got 7 sisters and 5 brothers in total. That's between my mother and my father. 4 of those girls I was raised up with, and 2 of those boys I lived with. And me being the oldest child, I was like, instead of just being a brother, I was like a father figure to him. So I took the role of helping my mother up until, you know, I got locked up at 20, of taking care of them, providing for them. And those are the ones that were supposed to say to me. They were the ones that meant the world to me outside of not having my own kids.
That's right. And that takes me to my next question, man. Like, what was your story on how you grew up as a youth? The experiences you've had, the traumas you may have endured, and what it was that may have led to your incarceration.
Okay, man, that's like a wild card. But coming up, man, for me, like I said, just being the oldest out of 7, you know, my mother had 7 of her own, and me being the oldest, man, it's like growing up, I grew up in the neighborhood. Once again, most people know it as the Circle. And it always had a bad name and a bad reputation, you know, drugs, violence of all sorts. And coming up in this neighborhood as a 12, 13-year-old, you know, trying to make it too young to work and things of that nature, not having a father figure in the home. So it puts the burden on me of feeling like, man, I got to be responsible. And there's times where, you know, my mother, she was young. She had me at 15.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
her mother was young and had her at 15. So you got kids having kids, nobody really knowing the role and the responsibility that come with parenthood. But I could say, with my mother being...
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
With my mother being a dedicated parent, she gave us did the best she could with what she had and what little education she had. But, the thing was, my mother, she was like my best friend, and she shared a story with me one time. And it was like, she don't regret any of her kids. She loved all of us equally. But the burden on her was that she felt trapped. And what I mean by trapped was, she told me when I was a kid, probably about 3 or 4, she left to go to job court. And going to job court, she would be in Georgia somewhere. And she asked my grandmother not to bring me to the bus station. But for some reason, my grandmother did. She brought me there, wished my mother goodbye and everything. And she felt this guilt and this weight that she was carrying that entire trip. And there was a fear that when she came back to take care of me and to take me back with her to Georgia, I wouldn't know her as my mother. And so that fear of her first child not knowing her and her only child not knowing her, as his parent, she couldn't live with that. So without any money and everything, she explained to me how, she cried to the bus driver and he bought her a ticket to come back. She came back and that was her biggest regret because she ended up having 7 kids and no father figure. She didn't make the kids on her own. And none of our fathers was there to help her support and take care of the kids. So now, here I come, I'm 13 and we're struggling. My mom's, I watch her work 2 jobs. Sometimes, she hustle on the side and everything just to make ends meet and keep bills paid. And there was times we still end up in the dark, man. Times we still end up out without lights and running water. So we had to carry water and sometimes run a drop cord to the neighbor's house just for, lights and stuff. So there was this one time where I could recall me and one of my uncles, which is my mother's brother, we went one night to steal some water on the neighbors. I'm not thinking it a big deal or a big problem. We're just going to get a bucket of water and be gone. So I was, shaken by the sound of this gun cocking and everything. And when I look up, the man was holding the shotgun, and it's in my face. So I dropped the bucket of water, and I'm terrified. I'm only 13, and I'm crying. But I think it shocked the guy also because his thing was, he's thinking maybe some people out there around his house stealing and taking things we shouldn't take. So I explained to him what was going on. It's like, no, we don't have water right now. So I was just coming over here to try to get some water real quick. And so the guy explained, he's like, listen, that's not the way you go about it. You should knock on the door and I would allow you to get some water. Don't let this happen again. But from that moment, I was so shook thinking that, man, I could have lost my life that night. I was never going to allow my mother to continue to struggle, and I was going to do whatever I needed to do, even if I didn't want to help my mother. And so it was from that moment I felt kind of forced, and I started selling drugs. But before I could start selling drugs, I needed money first. So I didn't go to anybody and ask them for anything. And at the time, some of my loved ones, who was poor and everything, so they would go to the blueberry fields and stuff of that nature. And so there was one time it's like, you know what, I'm going to go out here. Because if I could pick enough flats, then maybe, I could get $45, $50, and I could buy me a gram of dope, and I could start selling some drugs. So that was my plan. That's what I did. And from there, I started, as time was going, I really didn't want to do this. I could recall, telling my brothers and my little cousins and my little uncles. I say little uncles because I got some uncles that's younger than myself. And I'm telling them how, look, we're not going to sell drugs. We're not going to do this. We're going to go to school and get an education. I just wanted to be the trendsetter. I wanted to be the one, to break what we know as the generational curses. I wanted to do something different. I wanted more out of life, not just for myself, but for my loved ones. And so it's back and forth. Off and on, I'm selling drugs until one day, I'm 14. My mom, she found out. She'd take the drugs from me. She'll sell it and everything, make the money, give me the money, and be like, baby. She would plead with me as best she could, baby. Don't do this because I don't want you life going down that road. If you make your bed hard, you got to lay in it. But in my defense, and my argument was, Mom, I just want to help you. I'm tired of us struggling. You know, I see you working and everything, and it still ain't working. You still in the dark sometimes. And so from there, I just kept doing what I was doing. And eventually, you know, it was helping. It was helping because things in our conditioning in the house started to become better and everything. But I didn't want, it's not something I truly want. So we fast forward to tape, I think a bigger turning point than that, even though, and so it's like, let me go back a little bit. Like going through these translations, it's me with a lot of rage and a lot of anger in my heart because I feel like, man, life ain't fair. Like, I ain't asked to come into this world, but I got to be doing things I truly don't want to do. Where's the dad? You know what I'm saying? My dad, he's not there. So it's like, where's my sister's dad? They're not there. So having this rage in my heart and doing the things I really didn't want to do, it
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Okay,
it kind of turned my mind.
We're going to get back to this question, and I'm going to let you finish what you got to say about growing up as a youth. So with that, just call back my brother.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Behind the Walls Talk will continue. Back to Behind the Walls Talk. Hey, my brother, and you were saying that, my brother?
Yeah, and I was saying, it's like having this rage in my mind and this hatred in my heart because I'm feeling like, life didn't deal me a fair hand. And it's like, I didn't ask to be here, but I got to do things I really don't want to do. And I'm seeing what's at lack in my residence and in my community, and I really want to differ. But it's like nobody is ever teaching me anything. So it was to where when you're this young and you're only 13, 14, there's nobody in the home to help me with homework. So it's like I either do it or I don't. It gets done or it didn't. And so I got to basically be a parent to myself and to my siblings. Because, mom, like I said, she being young, and it's times, no disrespect or nothing bad on mom's, me understanding it. She still want to kind of live her life and, go out and have fun. So there's times I'm forced to stay home and babysit. And in the midst of having to babysit my siblings, I think that's the role that grew on me and that responsibility that made me feel obligated. So it's like, even when it wasn't my children and it wasn't my place, but I feel obligated to cling to my sisters.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
So it's like I got to be the man that they need. I got to be more than a brother to them. And so once again, I'm doing my thing in the streets, and I got my little crew. I got my guys that I'm running with and I'm angry with.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
My mom, she never liked my choice, my crowd and everything, but I had a big influence on a lot of people, and me having that influence, it was like, okay, this is the opportunity to have people around me. So I'm stuck in between, basically two lives, doing things I don't want to do and trying to finish school to show my siblings that, hey, this is the way you need to go, and not really having that guiding hand to show me what it is I should be doing and the sacrifices I should be making. I'm thinking that what I'm doing is not too bad. And so, I get 17 and everything, and I think this was a pinnacle in my life that was a very grave turning point. And I'm dating this female from Hallsboro and everything, good girl and everything. And they went to church four times throughout the week. And so she didn't know about my lifestyle or my background. And so me going through that, and it's like, he and that's like, man, you know what? Let me go to church with her sometimes and see what's going on. And so my family, though, I always grew up in a Christian household. My family, they love and they big believers. And this kind of pulled me out of the streets. So here it is where when my mother couldn't get me to stop selling drugs, the lifestyle that this female was leading is like, man, I don't want to take away from her. I want to add to it. And I find comfortability in this. The church at the time, they was welcoming folks. And so it's like taking me in. It made me feel a sense of love, a sense of home. So I stopped selling drugs eventually. And, not having an understanding also of spiritual things, just believing that God exists. So it's like 8 months into the relationship, the preacher is somebody I looked up to because I watch her, lay hands on people. She demonstrates divine things that I feel true believers should be able to demonstrate when it comes to the faith. And, the laying on of hands and healing people, praying over the dead and God raising them up. So it caused me to develop a profound respect for her to where, you know what, if it costs me to stand in front of this bullet for her, I'm willing to go that far because this woman is true and she's dedicated. Well, 8 months into that relationship, I was in church one day. Me and my girlfriend, we sitting in the third pew. And she says, she's giving a sermon. And then all of a sudden, the sermon turned on us. And she says, pardon my language, but I got to give it to you verbatim. She says, y'all need to cut that shit out. Talk about y'all in love. You're too young to know what love is. And so I'm kind of blown away because it's like, hold up, this is the woman I look up to. This is the girl that I truly love. Like, I was young. I was a little player and everything. The girls love me. You know what I'm saying? So, and guys like to be around me. So here it is. I'm being faithful to this girl, and I know I truly love her. I stopped selling drugs, which my mother couldn't get me to stop doing. And it was going to church was bringing my family back to God. And so this rage was in my heart now, and this confusion clouded my mind because here's a woman I look up to, I respect. If God is telling her to say this, how could God really be doing that? Like, I know I love this girl. So in that moment, she said to me, she said, don't no man supposed to live off a woman. The Bible says when a man don't work, he don't eat. Because at the time, over time, I pour my funds into the collection plate, thinking that, okay, God is going to bless me. So I'm looking for something different. I'm looking for my blessings to come from the Most High. And here it is. She's telling me this now. It's confusing to me. So in that moment, I began to hate God. I began to rage against God because how can God tell this woman this, And I know I'm only a child, but my pride wouldn't let me show her how hurt I was. So my girl, she's crying and everything. And the moment church got out, I'm thinking that the whole church, the congregation, then had to talk about it and everything. So when we get ready to leave, before we left the parking lot, I could recall her mother and her grandmother looking at me, and they said, baby, pastor was wrong. If God did tell her to say that stuff, she should have pulled y'all to the side because you don't do that. You don't get people out loud, especially kids. And that's what I needed to hear to know that everybody wasn't against me. And, I broke down crying, man, and it was really touching because it's like it was tearing something within my spirit. And I was totally lost because here it is, me thinking I'm being drawn to the light and I'm doing a good thing, and this is what I get told. And so in my heart and in my mind, I'm like, you know what, man, F God. God can't be real. I became this rebellious soul because of my hurt and my rage, and I just can't understand. And so from that moment, I went back to the streets, and going back to the streets was like, you know what, this is what I'm going to dedicate my life to. Nothing else matters. If you either with me or against me, either part of my crew or you're not. And so the moment I left, before I stopped selling drugs, I only had a little bit of drugs.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
But this guy came to me, and when this guy came to me, he blessed me. He gave me a lot more drugs than I ever had, and before I stopped selling drugs. But I didn't.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
I couldn't see it at the time and look at it like, man, okay, this is the devil trying to bless me to keep me going down the dark path and away from what I should really be doing. And so that's when I just living like, life didn't matter anymore. That life didn't care. And I kind of, deep down within, I kind of didn't care if I live or die anymore, man. And so it's like, just going through that and just still trying to make a way for my family and trying to be there. Like all the sacrifices I could say that I was making was me making a way for home. Like I sacrificed everything for other people. I put myself on the back burner because I found satisfaction and joy of knowing the people closest to me was taken care of. But one thing I did do, I finished school. I stayed in school because I wanted to show my sisters and my brothers that, hey, even though I'm doing this, I'm in the street, I really don't want to be. Get your education. Go somewhere. And, you know, I actually had a scholarship, man. I had a scholarship my last year of high school for football. I was very athletic. And I stayed, but I ended up quitting the team. Like, it's like 2 weeks before Christmas. And, you know, like I say, growing up poor and everything, not really having much. So Christmas, you know, these big holidays that most of us are taught to partake in. And the family is falling short. You know, it's a big family, man. You got to imagine. I'm going to go back a little bit. Growing up in the house with, like, this from the time I'm, like, 10 to probably about 14. Living with 21 people. You growing up in one house with 21 people. You know, my grandmother, she had, the 21 come from my grandmother. She had 11 of her own, you know. And then my mother, she had her 7. And my aunt, one of my aunts, she had her 3. So we're all living in the same home. And I can say, you know, we always had a sufficient amount of food and everything, but there's really no way to really be living, you know, and to growing up. And so we always crowded. So it's like all of these things, and we just wanted to escape that and just be able to get my mother something she could call her own. She never had a house of her own. She never really had a car of her own in the land. And it's stuff that as a family you want to see and you want to have. And so my biggest thing and my biggest goal was, you know, back to when I told you my mother shared her story with me about going to Job Corps. And when she shared that with me, I know that she spoke it from the depth of her spirit. And I gave my mother a promise. I said, you know what, Mama, since you sacrificed for me, came back so that I could know you as my mother, I promise you I'm going to make you proud. You're not going to regret none of it. And so that was my goal. That was my agenda. But somewhere, you know, I went left. I went down this road, and it's all because, like I say, the rage that I'm growing up with and the things that's not right in the household, the sacrifices. Me selling the drugs, it's not something I wanted to do. At the moment, it was working. And then, like I said, the church situation, it's like, man, what do I do to make things right? If when I'm trying my best to do right, everything is always going wrong. And, you know, I'm going to share this part of my story, man, and I don't think any of my relatives know and have ever heard. Was, you know, when I can recall being at least 9 or 10, and one of my uncles, you know, I guess maybe he thought it was funny or everything, but he tried to hold me down and let one of his brothers sexually molest me and everything. So the ordeal was never complete, but the fact of, you know, him stripping me naked and just holding me down to try to make sure something like that happened, it does something to you, you know. And so to have to live with this fear and to never really tell it and to never really express it, but knowing it's wrong, and when you're a kid, there's not much you could do. You don't really know what you should say or what you should talk about, because when we grow up in a dysfunctional home, there's nobody to really establish any type of order, you know what I'm saying? There's nobody to really show you what it's like to be moral, you know, and to have that moral compass. And so going through all that, man, it kind of sort of like, it did something to me internally, but I always try to find a way around that to believe that life will be better and that life is going to get better. And now ending up in here, it's like, man, I'm coming here with all these problems. I'm going, regardless of what I have to say or what I did in my life, I always did the best thing I could do with the information and the knowledge that I did have. And once again, I learned everything through trial and error. And that's the hardest thing about growing up, not really having any teachers in the home. You know, I have my teachers in school, but there's no personal feelings involved when it comes to that type of education. And so that's what led me, man, to, like I say, just being loyal and making the wrong sacrifices, not really understanding, you know, the totality of your circumstances and the choices that you made, or feeling like I ain't got a choice. I'm doing this because I ain't got a choice. And that's what you believe. And you believe that lie.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
It drives you down the road that I went down.
All right, check this out, my brother. When we come back for the behind the walls talk, I'm gonna ask you a question, man. as far as like what is it that
You have 60 seconds remaining.
what it is that you would like to say to the youth
right.
out there that may have faced the same experiences and traumas that you may have, that you faced in your time coming up, okay? So that
You have 30 seconds remaining.
Behind the Walls Talk will continue. Back to Behind the Walls Talk. As I was saying before the phone call ended just now, what is it that you would like to say to the youth out there now that are being misled and find a life of crime intriguing and find a life of gangs intriguing too as well? What would you like to say to them to uplift them and encourage them to go in the right direction?
I would first like to start by letting them know that regardless of how you grow up, regardless of the trauma, we can never downplay our realities, our struggles, our suffering. So I would never ask that you just push it to the side. But I want you to keep one thing in mind and never let anybody rob you of your ability to choose. Because sometimes we grow up and people teach us, or we hear it being said a lot, I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. But you always have a choice. You got to choose, whether right or wrong, whether good or bad, because it's you that got to deal with it, whether the consequences is good consequences or it's bad consequences. Because, you know, so often we get that mentality. And we
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
We develop that attitude. I do understand because I come from a struggle myself. I come from the street life. I overcome and have overcame a lot. But I want you to know that sometimes it's hard, but you got to always choose. You may feel that the decision is a forced decision, but you got to choose, and that's first and foremost. So keep that in mind. Now, whatever it is that you want to do in your life, you can do it. Because from the beginning,
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
We was created in the image of greatness. And that greatness that exists, it abide in me, you, regardless of your age, your creed, your color, your size, your looks. Some of us would not have about the way we look. We wish we could change certain things about ourselves. But what I'm telling you is to love you for you. Because when you're doing things like myself, it was never really to fit in. It was only to feel love. But when you're doing things to feel love and you're not loving yourself, you're robbing yourself of the very thing that's most important to you. You know, and that's your identity. And that's why a lot of us are suffering. We've lost our identity. We don't know who we are. And some of us will never know who we are because we're still buying in, feeding into the stigma that you should look and act this way. You should dress and walk this way. You should talk like this. And that street life, the gang life, it has no real love in it. I had to learn it the hard way. You know, and there was this female that I was in love with. And we're still close friends to this day. But the point is, my struggle was that I try to balance my loyalty between my street life and my love life. And you can't do that. Now, so whether you're a young man out there, you looking and you glamorizing and glorifying the street life, don't fool yourself and don't let nobody else fool you. I get it. I was there before. You know, we listen to this rap music, the hip-hop, the culture, it's kind of watered down. It's still robbing us of our true identity and the greatness that really exists in us. You can't be in the street thinking that you can live like Lil Durk. You can live like Lil Baby. You can live like Jay-Z, Young Jeezy. Because they no longer, even if they did any of that, they no longer have to conform to that mentality. They in a different ballgame. They're in the corporate world. So they can live, they can dress, they can talk and act however they choose to. Don't you fall into the trap of thinking that you can live a celebrity lifestyle, but you still in the streets thinking that the streets is the way to get you there. Fortunately, and to be realistic, some of us overcome, we survive the worst parts and we make it. But if I had to encourage you as if I'm talking to myself, and these are the things I wish somebody had told me. I wish somebody had told me before, you know, that, hey, the street life got this to offer you. And it's not what you think it's going to be. Because I never in a million years thought I'd see myself behind bars with 2 life sentences. Not just 1, 2 life sentences. And again, I clear my innocence and I maintain my innocence. But that don't matter once the judge says, the jury say guilty, or in the judge sent you, none of that matters. So if you want to overcome, be right and be real with yourself. There's times I had guys, I grew up living the so-called gangster lifestyle. I didn't always choose my friends based off that. Some of my friends, they were people that we consider squares. They were the people we consider lames. These are the good people. These are the people that's trying to do something different from what street guys was doing. That don't make you a square. That don't make you a lame. That just sets you apart and says that, hey, this is my identity. So you embrace who you are to the fullest, and you do only the things that truly satisfies you. You do only the things that truly helps you become more of who you are, because it's easy to get lost in all the glamour. And we already know, as my mother would always say, baby, everything that glitter ain't gold. So just know that it's the choice, the power to choose is in your hand. Good or bad, right or wrong. It's never, we gonna go through some things. So you didn't ask to be brought into this world like I or my siblings. None of us. Your mothers, they didn't ask to be brought into this world. Your fathers, they didn't ask to be brought into this world. But we're here. And what we have to do now is learn how to make life more of what it can be and not more of the struggle that it is. But you take your struggle and you also keep this in mind. It's never about what you're going through, but how you choose to respond to it. Because we're all going through something. And even though I say I got 2 life sentences, there's a man on death row somewhere that wish he had these 2 life sentences, so he wouldn't have to wait every day waiting to die. So I use that not to downplay my suffering or my reality, but I use that to keep my head up and to keep me feeling blessed, because I am blessed. Regardless of where I am right now, regardless of what you're going through right now, you're blessed beyond measure. It's only when you step into the reality of that and you fully grasp the concept that as within, so without. Check your internal self. Get your mind right. Get something on your mind that means something, because our problems are always more mental than it is physical. And when it becomes more than that, you have to know that things can get better. Things will get better. It's all about what you believe, because regardless of what any religious doctrine says about you,
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
Regardless of the goodness that I or anybody else tells you, none of it matter if you're still telling yourself the wrong things and you're believing the wrong things. So what is it that you're believing? Is it that you think about you? Because that's what's going to make the difference in your life. Change it. If you look in the mirror and you don't see something you like, I don't mean in a physical sense, but an internal state of mind. That's where it all starts from. When you can get that mind in check, you'll find.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
A lot of your problems and your frustrations, they will dissolve, because without a real peace of mind, all the money in the world wouldn't make a difference for you if your mind is still at war. And that's just something I want you to know, and I want you to hold on to, and I hope it helps you grow, and you know that this lifestyle, this gang lifestyle is not it. It's detrimental to us as a people. We need to learn how to communicate more effectively with one another. And that's the point. Instead of using aggression, anybody can fight. But one thing I've learned for myself, I practice doing the hard part. The hard part is loving people when you're suffering. It's through the act of loving when you're suffering that you transcend your own suffering. That's when things become better. It's a self-love. It's a selfless love, and it's a selfless act, because the man or the woman next to you matter just as much as you do. Don't never think that you're the only one going through problems and you're the only one suffering. We all got a story. Some of our stories are sadder and worse or deeper than others, but that don't take away from the pain or how you choose to handle your problem. Just know that it's all about what you're going to do with what you have available to you. And life can become, again, everything you manifest it to become is just all you. And it's only as difficult as we allow it to be because of our lack of education. Understand that your education, your knowledge is important. Knowledge is power, but it's nothing if it's just in the mind. It's only information. You obtain what's necessary in your life, and you utilize it to change your life. And you can change the lives of others in the process.
That's right. That's right. Hey, let me ask you something, bro. What does a second chance mean to you in society right now? If you get out right now and everything, what would that mean to you?
A second chance to me, man, is the only thing and the one thing I fight for every day. But a second chance would mean to me redemption, and it would mean rejuvenation for others. I say redemption for me because I long for the opportunity. I feel for so long I've been somebody who's misunderstood. There's times where, even when I first got locked up, the so-called ops or those guys that I used to have problems and beef with, when they got to know me on a personal level, them guys discovered that they could love me. Them guys started confessing to me that, man, I love you, bro, man, you real, you something. It's one thing to get to know somebody from a distance because of what you heard from them or heard about them or things you may have seen them doing when you caught them in the wrong at one time. But that's whatever charges I was convicted of, that's far from the man that I am. And that's people on both sides of the victim side of the street that cling to me right now. They look for me to call them, because what God has put in me is an inspiration to others. Because physically I'm down, but mentally I'm still free. So just being able to be home again, I could use that opportunity to show people who I truly am. A lot of people never really got to know me, even those that was around me, because as a man who was given to anger, I was caged in. I considered that my first and my only wife at the time because I was married to that spirit called anger, because I had to do a lot of things that I didn't want to do. And I made some wrong turns in my life. I did. I wasn't a saint. I made some wrong turns. But those that know, they know I always did what I thought was best. I always did things to help others before myself. And so I say rejuvenation to others because I know, and by the grace of God, it has been proven time and time again that I am very inspirational. Not because I've made myself this way, because I truly embrace who I am. I know myself, and I know who God has called me and created me to be. And I practice daily manifesting more of that self to the world around me so people can see the truth about who it is that I truly am. And it does people good. It touched the lives. And even being here, I've helped people through talking to people. And some guys have laid down their flags and just listening to me speak and tell them and show them what life could look like if they just give themselves a chance. Sometimes we don't give ourselves a chance. And so that's what I want to do now. I want to be able to have a chance to give myself a chance. So like I say, to be just that, to show my redemption and to be that rejuvenation to others, that breath of fresh air, regardless of what I've been charged and convicted of. I forgive myself and I forgive those who continue to hold things against me. But some of us have to learn to do the same thing, and that's just what a second chance to me would mean, and it would be so much more fruitful, not only for myself, because of this. The one thing I had to realize when I asked myself, who am I and what am I living for? I've always found that I've been living to help and to guide others to a better way of life. The problem is, for so long, I've been going about it the wrong way. But I had time to correct my errors, to clean up my
You have 60 seconds remaining.
And that's what it would be like.
Okay. We're going to get back to Behind the Walls Talk. We'll continue. Back to Behind the Walls Talk. Hey, my brother, any last words you would like to share, man? Because this has been a good interview, man. I wanted to make sure your voice got heard, your story got told, and, make sure the listeners out there, they take heed to everything that you said when it comes to the youth, when it comes to your lifestyle, when it comes to your changes that you made in your life. Well, is there any last words you would like to share with the listeners to Behind the Walls Talk?
Yes, I would. There's a very important thing I left out, and that was, the loss of my mother. 3 years ago, I was going through a situation where I was trying to get some legal paperwork prepared to send to the Santonio. And I always call my mother on Mondays, sometimes other days throughout the week. But this particular day, I was, tied up trying to get everything straight with this paperwork. So it took me all day, and I didn't get to call my mother the day that I normally do, which was on a Monday. And so about 10 o'clock at
night... This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
About 10 o'clock that night, I'm on the phone with a friend, and my sister texts her and say, hey, tell my brother to call me. It's important. It's about mama. So I just got this gut feeling that something was wrong. It's from the urgency in the message. And I called my sister, and she told me about the situation with my mother. And so come to find out, my mother ended up suffering with the medical.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
A brain aneurysm. And so there was nothing they could do for her, so eventually ended up pulling the plug. You know, this is a very trying moment because my number one reason for getting out again, every time I would talk to my mother, she would be like, baby, I'm like, baby, how you doing, mama? She's like, baby, I'm just so tired. But I could hear this urgency and, you know, the fact that I made life better and easier for my mother when I was there. So I always try to encourage her, mom, you know, just do what you need to do, mama. Just stay strong. I'll be home again, mama. I'll be home. She said, baby, I know you will. I'm like, no, I got you when I get there. She said, baby, I know you do. But this was my number one reason for wanting to get out. It's like, man, just to be there for my mother, just to live up to that promise I made her so long ago that I make her proud. But long story short, I fell short of that. And, you know, the state is so corrupt in the way that they do things. You would think that this is a mother. This is the last time I'll get to wish my mother goodbye, kiss her, things of that nature. I understand the severity of my charges. But we go to court all the time when we have to. We shackled and everything. I didn't see a reason where I shouldn't have been able to go to my mother's wake. It could have had a private setup and everything. I could have saw her in person, but I didn't get a chance to. And, you know, sometimes, even now, I cry, wake up in the night and I cry, you know. I haven't fully grieved the loss of my mother. But because I got to stay strong for this situation, that I'm still fighting for my freedom and that chance and that hope of another opportunity. And it's just going through that, man, it did something to me. And it just, at the same time, though, it inspired me to continue to stay in the fight. Because what I would like to see a lot of reform and change in the prison system. Because there's ways around obstacles and things that fall short of that. But when you have people in power who care nothing about the people that's on the side of the fence, you can't expect to get an opportunity for moments like that because the people truly don't care. And I just wanted to really express that, man, because, you know, that could have put me in a bad place to where I could have done anything. I could have just lost my mind. But by grace, I didn't lose my mind. I'm still standing strong and everything. And I'm still optimistic and I'm still fighting and being hopeful. But, again, through it all, I just like for everybody to know that life is not as bad as the devil makes it seem. I know that the devil will, and I would like to leave y'all with this. God has a plan for each of our lives, regardless of where we're at right now. But do know that Satan is real, and the devil also has a plan for each of our lives. So it's all about what side you're going to choose. You got to choose whether you want to or you don't. And I'm not preaching to you or trying to be religious. I'm telling you what's truly spiritual and what's very real and what is deep. These are the things that people overlook and think don't matter. It does matter because whether we want to or we don't, you look around at the world right now. You see how dark it is out there. This wickedness exists. Evil exists. It ain't just the corruption of the people, but we have forces that's beyond our comprehension. And I know this because things are very dark. I've actually had people to use black magic against myself while going through my situation to kind of sway conviction in their favor. But that's another story. My point is, just know that everything you're going through is not always part of God's plan because Satan has a plan too. I wish I could tell you that that's the truth, but Satan does have a plan. And his plan is always to make you second guess, to hate and to rage against your creator and think that God didn't truly bless us. But God truly blessed us. The devil just don't want us to see those blessings, and that's how we lose our ability to overcome, to rise above everything that seems to be pulling us down. And I just wish peace and blessings upon those that are still, the victim family that are still amongst us today. I would like for y'all to know that, hey, my condolences to y'all losses. Again, I said it even in trial, and I think a lot of you still don't believe it now. I did not commit the crimes that I'm accused of. However, I stood by a code, which is that code of silence. I was not a part of the action that took the lives of these people that's the victims in these cases. Whether that's believed or not, I'm sorry if me saying and confessing it is still not enough for you, but I truly give my condolences to your loss, and I wish there was something I could do on my own behalf to take that sting and the pain away from you. I can't say I understand your pain. I will not try to allow you to understand. I just know what it was like losing my mother, and that pain is unbearable and it's unexplainable. So I really wish peace and blessings upon the family.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
Even my own family for have to suffer in my absence, because I know I'm somebody that is needed by his loved ones. And may God bless you all, and I thank you for this interview and the opportunity to tell the story.
Yeah, we most definitely thank you for this interview, bro. That was a beautiful interview, man. And, yo, that's my word, bro. We're going to make sure that your voice is going to be heard. We're going to make sure that your story is going to be heard.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.